When you're in love with a beautiful woman, it's tough. Everyone wants her and admires her. It might just be an ego issue, but I've been betrayed before by unreliable friends and half-hearted lovers. Each time it happens, it convinces me more. When you're in love with a beautiful woman, you notice every glance she makes. Ironically, this 70s song played on an obscure FM station as I drove from Denver to Santa Fe. I didn't know anyone in Santa Fe. Most of my friends and family are in Denver, where I have season tickets to the Colorado Avalanche. No one plays hockey in Santa Fe, and my company has 6 offices in Denver. I'm in the investment business, and our new Santa Fe office will be in an apartment near Presbyterian Medical Center. Another irony, I grew up Methodist. I should start from the beginning. My name is Thomas Rexford, but friends call me Jaxie. While my friends were at Northwestern, I spent 3 years in the lumber business. Yes, I became a lumberjack, hence the nickname. I still have my gear and my Harley-Davidson, a 2005 Softail Standard FX in perfect condition. My ex-wife and I used to ride it often, but those days are over. I grew up in the Denver area, and except for my logging days, I've never left. After Oregon, I worked for my Uncle Mike, who owned an investment company. He got me into the University of Denver for a finance degree. 12 years ago, Uncle Mike retired and sold me the business. We had 4 stores, and I opened 2 more, increasing our staff from 26 to 31. Even in tough times, we cared for our customers and stayed strong. I mentioned my ex-wife, so here's more about her. I knew Jessica Remington in high school, but we ran in different circles. I played hockey, she played soccer, and was an honor student. Our paths rarely crossed. I wasn't ugly, just a bit gruff with long brown hair. Hockey guys have a unique way of talking, often saying damn in sentences. Hockey players are a tight-knit group, and our parents usually hang out together too. We felt like outsiders, thinking people didn't care about us. That's why Jessica and I were just acquaintances in high school. Jessica, or Jess, is stunning. With deep red hair, a lithe build, and blazing green eyes, she turns heads. Her maternal grandmother came from Ireland in the 50s. She could get any guy she wanted, but never dated the star athletes because they were often idiots. She hung out with a small group of friends and occasionally dated popular guys. We met 3 years after I returned to Denver from the Northwest. I had gained some muscle from logging. I was playing in a men's hockey league when she walked in. Her friend Trisha, dating our goalie Mike, had been bitten by the hockey bug. Hockey players often add an E, I, or XY to names, hence Toonie for Mike. Jaxie, look at the bleachers. Is that Jessica Remington? Beamer pointed out. Looks like it, I replied. I can't believe she's near the rink. She's with Trisha. Toonie's girlfriend must have brought her. Being a typical American kid, I tried to catch her attention during the game, scoring 2 goals and an assist. Afterward, as we were leaving the warm-up area, I passed her. Hey, Thomas. Great game. Aren't you going to say hi to an old school friend? Sorry, Jessica. I didn't realize we were friends in high school. It's good to see you. I stopped, put my bag down, and offered a handshake. I'm a hockey player, not great at socializing. She smiled and took my hand. Maybe if you stepped away from the rink, you'd notice I thought you were a nice guy. What is that awful smell? Sorry, hockey bags have a unique odor. I'll throw them in the Jeep so you won't have to be near them. And I'll see you later. She looked a bit hurt, but I didn't know why. We barely knew each other, and I was polite. Beamer ran after me as I got into my restored 2005 red Jeep Wrangler Rubicon. Hey, Jaxie, are you going to O'Connell's for a beer? Jessica's coming. She wondered if turning into a hottie made her a snob. You might have a chance, bro. Don't mess it up. As my Grandpa Mitchell used to say, I may be ugly, but I'm not stupid. So I agreed to meet at O'Connell's. I arrived first, got a Coors, and sat down. When she arrived, she came straight to me. Listen, Jaxie, is that what they call you? Sorry if I pushed you away, but your bag stinks. Still, I'd like to socialize without the bag and ketchup. Sure, Jess. I'd love to hear what's going on in your life. For the next 2 hours, it felt like just the two of us. I bought her a beer, and she bought me 2. We talked about the past few years. She went to UCLA for marine biology, worked at the Southern California Marine Institute, learned to surf, but returned to Denver, her mountain home. She's now pursuing a teaching certificate to teach middle school math. She was intrigued by my logging experience and liked my Jeep. She even enjoyed the hockey lingo I explained to her. Hey, Jacker, can you get me a beer? It's Jaxie, not Jacker, I corrected, pointing to our server. Since you avoided me at the rink, I thought Jacker was fitting, she said with a sly smile. Let's have some fun, I managed to say. She winked. Maybe. Before we left, we hugged and she gave me her number. Call me. I'd like to ride Greta if you'll take me. It's on my wish list. I waited 2 days to call her, not wanting to seem desperate. "Hey, Jess, it's Thomas. Want to ride with me this Saturday? There's a music festival in Leadville." "Screw you, Jaxie. I have my own plans and can't drop them for a hockey player." Confused, I whispered, "Sorry, Jess. Maybe next weekend." "Screw you again, Jaxie. I'd love to join you. What time?" "How about 9 a.m.? "I'll be ready," she said, then added, "Hey, wait, I don't know where you live." "Figure it out, Jacker," she said, hanging up. "It's Jaxie," I muttered. I called Toomer, who got Jess's address from Trisha. Saturday morning, I knocked on her apartment door in Golden at 9 a.m. sharp. She opened the door wearing shorts, a white tank top, a red and white plaid shirt, and black cowboy boots. A UCLA sweatshirt was tied around her waist. She smiled at my reaction. "I take it I passed the test," she purred. "Yes, you did." I gave her my spare helmet, and we hit the road. The ride to Leadville was great. Colorado summers are warm, but cool in the mountains. We stopped to put on warmer clothes once we entered the foothills. She wore her sweatshirt, and I donned my black biker jacket. "If we do this again, I'll dress like a biker girl," she said, poking me. Leadville was amazing. We enjoyed live bands, ate delicious tacos, and talked for hours. Everything went smoothly, except for the guys ogling her. Some were discreet, while others nudged their girlfriends or wives. It bothered me that she seemed to encourage it with smiles and winks. Despite this, I enjoyed our time together. When I dropped her off around midnight, we talked at her door and she gave me a friendly kiss, thanking me for the fun day. "I really enjoyed today, Thomas. Greta was great, and I hope you'll call me soon. Thanks for not bringing your hockey bag." She explained that she wanted to call me Thomas, unlike everyone else who called me Jack or Jackie. That day began 2 months of casual dating, leading to us becoming exclusive. We texted and talked daily. She earned her teaching certificate and got a job at a local middle school. After another 4 months, we introduced each other to our families. I met her 2 younger sisters, Meg and Beth, her grandmothers, and her grandfather. She met my parents, my brother Mikey, Uncle Mike, and my grandparents. After several family gatherings, including Thanksgiving and Christmas, I decided to assess our relationship and called a war council with Dad, Mikey, and Grandpa Rexford. We met on my porch in early January, gathered around a table with a fire blazing, and a bottle of 15-year-old Glenlivet. "Well, guys, here's the deal," I began. "I've been dating Jess for almost 6 months, 4 of them exclusively. I have feelings for her, and before I take any steps, I want to know what you think. I need the plain truth from each of you, starting with the youngest. Grandpa, I want you to listen and challenge their opinions if needed." Everyone nodded. "Okay, Mikey, give it to me." Mikey, 20 months younger than me, always looked up to me as kids, but he was smart. He just finished his master's in applied math. He loved figuring things out, always wanting to improve them. 2 years after I returned from logging, Mikey, a senior at the University of Colorado Boulder, borrowed my bike for a week. He spent most of the time taking it apart and putting it back together, making improvements to the fuel system. When I got it back, it ran better than before. "Jaxie, if this were math, I'd talk about hydrodynamic factors, but I'll keep it simple. Jess seems great. She has a good teaching job, cares about you, and doesn't take herself too seriously. She doesn't have a long list of ex-boyfriends, which is a good sign. You both show real affection, including respect, physical touch, good communication, and realistic conflict resolution. However, you'll need to be on guard because she's very attractive, and other guys will notice. My main concern is the short time you've been together. I'd suggest waiting at least 6 more months before making a long-term commitment. You're both 27, so there's no rush." Dad then spoke. "You're smart and mature with great business sense. You've handled your personal life wisely, avoiding trouble. I think you'd make a great husband. Jessica seems wonderful, and I agree with Michael's caution. Your mom and I dated from 16 to 23, with some breakups that helped us know what we wanted. A little more time in courtship wouldn't hurt." He then looked at Grandpa Rexford, our elder statesman. Grandpa leaned back in his chair, sipped his whiskey, and gazed at the mountains thoughtfully. After a moment, he looked me in the eye and said, "Beauty is skin deep, but ugliness goes to the bone." Then he took another sip, staring at the hills again. It was mysterious, and I was about to ask for his thoughts when my dad's look told me to be patient. Grandpa continued, "Thomas, Jessica is a sweet girl with stunning looks. I've seen you 2 together, and I can tell you're in love. She has good qualities, but she also seems to crave attention. She always needs to be the center of everything, which makes her seem immature and narcissistic. She can't stay quiet and needs constant engagement, likely because she wasn't disciplined as a child. Your dad grew up in the 70s, always devoted to rock and roll music. I never understood it until one day in '79, I heard the lyrics to a song he was playing. It was Bob Seger, and the song was Hollywood Nights. Dad interrupted. Bob Seger, Dad. The song Hollywood Nights. Yeah, that's right. The song is about a young guy heartbroken by a beauty queen. There's a line, "She was born with a face that allowed her to get what she wanted." He saw that face and lost control. I thought, a song that makes sense. My point, Thomas, is that Jessica can get anything because of her looks. She knows it, even if she doesn't always use it. This is the potentially ugly part of your relationship. Will she flirt with other men after marriage just because she can? Even if she's faithful, won't men still come on to her? How much time will you spend worrying? Will she respect you enough to stop? I don't know, my advice is more specific. I like the slower approach, but add one element. Ask your uncle for a 6-month vacation. Go back to Oregon and work in timber, but take Jess. Be alone where she knows no one and try to settle in. She can substitute teach, so her career isn't on hold. Mike won't like losing you, but I'll talk to him. Take long walks and talk about everything. Life, work, faith, kids, fears, hopes, and dreams. See if you have enough in common. If she refuses, it's a sign to slow down. If she agrees, even nervously, you have a good foundation. Your dad and Mikey are right. She's the kind of woman who can get anything and anyone, so deal with that now. If she's ugly inside, better to know now than in 5 years with kids and disaster. Great advice from 3 smart guys who loved me. We spent the rest of the evening watching the AVs destroy Vancouver, occasionally discussing Jessica. I slept on it and decided to compromise. I didn't want to go back to the Northwest, but needed more alone time with her. I decided not to propose for at least 4 months. There's no point in asking for advice if you won't take it. Only a fool ignores wise counsel, and I believed I had taken the best of what was offered. 2 weeks later, I took Jess out to our favorite local pub in Golden for burgers and beer. It was a relaxed place, and my hockey buddy Richie, who owned it, seated us in the back for some privacy. "So, are we just casual today, Thomas, or do we have an agenda?" she asked, looking gorgeous and as intuitive as ever. "Somewhere in the middle," I said. "I've never seriously dated anyone before, but I've fallen in love with you. I don't know the best steps forward, but I want to move toward a long-term relationship. If you agree, I have some ideas to discuss as a starting point." "Thomas, I'm flattered. You just made a lot of sense without saying damn. I've been thinking about this too. I'm scared because I'm falling in love with you and I've never been in such a serious relationship. So what's your plan?" For the next 20 minutes, I shared my thoughts, seeing only each other for at least 4 more months, spending more weekends alone together, and having at least 2 evenings a week to talk about important topics. I suggested inviting older couples we respect for advice and making sure we are compatible in all aspects. She teased me about the last part, and I joked back, earning a playful punch in the arm. "Want to come, handsome?" she asked, flashing her intense green eyes at me. "I agree with your ideas, and I can teach you a few things," she said with a grin. "Let me get the check and we can start the lesson right now," I offered. "How about we start with the first lesson right here?" she said, as we finished our beers. We rode back to my apartment on Greta. As I unlocked the door, Jess whispered, "I'm not sure I should be alone with a hockey player. I might get taken advantage of." In one smooth motion, I opened the door and said, "No way, girl." I led her to the bedroom, and an hour later, we fell asleep in each other's arms. My last thought was how amazing it all felt. 4 months of investing in our relationship went almost smoothly. I say almost because there was a flaw I should have noticed. About 3 months in, we went to a local pub with live bands. We had a few drinks, and Jess was teaching me how to dance. We were having a blast. When I went to the men's room for a couple of minutes, I returned to find Jess talking to a guy who looked familiar but wasn't a friend. He stood too close, and Jess wasn't keeping her distance. Remembering my friend's warnings, I stayed calm and ordered more beers while watching them. Jess was clearly flirting, giggling, and touching his forearm. She didn't seem to miss me at all. When Jess saw me, there was a brief look of guilt. Then she smiled and said, "Thomas, you remember Wayne from high school?" Wayne smirked slightly and extended his hand. "Hey, Thomas, good to see you. It's been about 10 years. You look great." I shook his hand and said hello. A couple of things stood out. He called me Thomas, not Jaxie or Rexy, meaning he wasn't a hockey buddy. Jess knew she had crossed the line. Now it was a matter of how she would react. She missed her first chance. "Wayne, why don't you join us? Are you here with someone?" "Thanks, I will." "No, just here with some buddies. No one I can't ditch for old friends." "I can't believe you're solo. There are plenty of ladies who should notice you," Jess said. She kept chatting with Wayne, never involving me or thanking me for the beer. Why don't you spin me around on the dance floor? She suggested to Wayne. Strike 3. She didn't ask if I was okay, or even look at me until she led Wayne to the dance floor. Be back in a while, babe. Don't flirt while I'm gone. Wayne looked nervous. He was taller than me, but seemed like a clean-cut rich boy who'd never been in a fight. I'd had a few skirmishes in high school in Oregon. Truthfully, I got my back kicked the first week in the logging industry for being rude to a redneck. He punched me up, but later we shook hands, and he took me under his wing. Since then, I've learned to keep my temper in check. Wayne didn't attend our school, but he knew I did by the look in his eyes. Do you mind if I dance with Jess? He asked. Of course he doesn't, Jessica answered for me, leaving no room for objection. There's no fourth strike in baseball. Wayne avoided a punching by at least trying to ask, honoring the unspoken male code. Jessica, however, was in for a rude awakening. When they returned, I was gone. I had a lovely moonlit ride home on Greta to cool down. Jess and I didn't live together. Call me old school, but I believe it's disrespectful for a man to ask a woman to live with him without a ring. It makes it too easy for a guy to take advantage and walk away. The ride home took 20 minutes, and another 20 passed before Jess's calls started coming in. Thomas, where are you? I can't find you at home. Why did you leave without picking me up? You looked like you were having too much fun with Wayne. Come back and get me now, you idiot. You're embarrassing me. Good night, Jess. I'm sure you'll make it home. She called again before I could turn off my phone, but I ignored it. I wanted a good night's sleep before the storm that would erupt in the morning. At 7:30 a.m., while drinking my second cup of coffee, Jess burst in with her green eyes blazing. We didn't live together, but she had a key. You son of a cow, Thomas! How dare you leave me like that? Are you such a little boy that you ran away because you were hurt? Explain yourself right now if you want me to stay. Her nostrils flared, and her face was red with anger. If I hadn't been a lumberjack, I might have been scared. Would you like to sit down and have a cup of coffee, Jessica? No, screw it. I don't want to sit and drink coffee with a juvenile like you. I kept my tone calm, which might have made her angrier, but I wasn't about to argue with an irritated Irish girl. Okay, suit yourself. Let me be blunt, Jess. I love you deeply and want us to be together, but I won't tolerate disrespect. What you did last night was unforgivable. We're not just dating, we're committed to each other. We agreed to deepen our relationship intentionally. Wayne was in your personal space and you were open to him. You didn't ask if he was welcome at our table. You invited him without consulting me. You flirted with him, told him other women should notice him, and asked him to dance without looking at me once. Even Wayne tried to ask if everything was okay, but you didn't let me respond. How is that respectful? How does it show your love for me? You like the attention you get from guys, and that's fine. But treating me like I'm not an equal, and having the final say in everything, is unacceptable. I was wrong to leave without explaining, but I won't compete for you. We're past that stage. I'm yours, and you should expect love, respect, and honor from me, just as I expect the same from you. If you don't see it that way, let me know. It will hurt, but I'll respect your choice and move on. But if you love me and want to continue, you must respect and honor me. Imagine if it were reversed, and a woman flirted with me in front of you. How would you feel if I ignored you and danced with her without asking? It was silent for a moment as Jess stared at me. I thought she might walk away, but then tears filled her eyes and her lip quivered. Suddenly, she threw herself into my arms, sobbing. I held her as she caught her breath. I'm so sorry, Thomas. I didn't think. It was horrible of me. I can't believe I treated you so badly. I love you and want to be with you. Please forgive me. She started crying again. I held her a moment longer, then gently pushed her back to look her in the eye. She was sincere. Jess, I forgive you. I love you. But we have to be clear and put ourselves first. I know guys will always hit on you, but we can't disrespect each other. I know, Thomas, that's exactly it. She wiped her face with her sleeve. I must look terrible. Let me wash my face, then let's have coffee and talk about growing in our love. 5 months later, we were married on a beautiful Saturday morning near Breckenridge. It was a gorgeous late May day with sunny skies and temperatures in the mid-60s. Despite my hockey buddies' boisterous congratulations, the event was pleasant. Surrounded by family and friends, we vowed to forsake all others and live together as husband and wife. We enjoyed the day until 6 p.m. when we headed out for our honeymoon. Greta took us to the airport for our flight to Cabo. After 9 amazing days, we returned to Denver at the start of summer. Over the past few months, Jess and I have had many long conversations and walks, addressing important issues. We even saw a therapist to discuss family, background, expectations, and communication. I felt I had followed the advice of the three men who loved me most and embarked on a journey of a lifetime with the woman I truly loved, who truly loved me. How is it that just 4.5 years after my divorce from Jess, I'm single and driving down the highway again? I thought I had followed all the advice I received. Jess and I covered a lot of emotional, psychological, and relational ground before and after we married. I believed we were honest and committed to love, care, and respect. But that doesn't mean much if the other person doesn't hold the same promise in their heart. Jess had different definitions of these words, ones she never shared with me. There were patterns in her life she couldn't or wouldn't change, which put us at risk as a couple. Grandpa Rexford was right. Jessica was beautiful on the outside, but her inner ugliness ran deep. A year earlier, Jess learned she was accepted to teach Algebra II and trigonometry to 10th graders at the local high school. 2 older teachers were close to retirement, and Jess was on track to teach AP Math soon, according to her department chair, Dr. Charles Welburn, also known as Chuck the Devil. For the first 2 months of the school year, Jess was excited. Every night, she shared stories about her classes and the joy she got from teaching math to kids. She spoke highly of Dr. Welborn, her mentor. I didn't think much of it. He seemed like a nice guy who wanted everyone to do their best. I should have been more cautious. Dr. Welborn was 15 years older than Jess, married with 3 teenage children. I met him in early October, expecting someone extraordinary from the way Jess described him. Instead, he was average, about 160 centimeters tall, trim for his early 40s, with no gray hairs. He wasn't boring, but nothing about him stood out. I expected a teaching legend, but met someone more ordinary. I'll save time for those who aren't hockey fans. Barry Melrose, picked 36th in the 1978 draft, played about 300 professional games and had a mediocre career. For me, Dr. Welborn was like Melrose. Nice, but unimpressive. I never understood Jess's fascination with him. I thought she appreciated his support and guidance, so who was I to judge? I listened politely as she talked about how inspiring he was. It was then I noticed that 90% of our conversations were about her work, and 75% of those were about Welborn. When I talked about my work, hockey, or family, she would listen for a couple of minutes before switching back to her world. As a first-time husband, I assumed this was normal. I didn't mind hearing about her job or her boss, but I wanted her to ask about my life too. Sadly, she rarely did, and I never brought it up until it was too late. The week after Thanksgiving, I was on the phone with my mom. We were discussing Christmas plans when she switched gears. "Thomas, how are you and Jess?" "Okay, Mom." "Really? Are you sure, Thomas?" Obviously, it wasn't a question. "Yes, I think so, Mom. Why do you ask?" "Well," Mom paused. "Mom, you can talk to me. If something is bothering you, please tell me. It's just that she's always talking about herself and her work. I've never heard her brag about you or ask about your work. That strikes me as odd. Enthusiasm in a relationship should be mutual. You're always supporting her and paying attention, but she doesn't reciprocate." We talked more, and I thanked her for her concern. I didn't agree or disagree with her observations, but felt she had picked up on my growing anxiety. I told her I would seriously consider her words. I didn't mention it to Jess right away, but started keeping a simple record of our conversations. I work with numbers, so it was easy to track. That's how I found out we talked mostly about Jess and her world. I got an uneasy feeling recalling the Seeger song. She was born with a face that let her get her way. Jess was amazing, but she was immature and selfish in this area, always used to getting what she wanted. I decided to plan a weekend getaway for us to talk and enjoy each other's company. We used to do this in our first 3 years of marriage, so it wouldn't surprise Jess. I booked a cabin near Aspen, checked our schedule, and saw no school conflicts. I'd miss a hockey game and deal with some "what the hell, Jaxie" comments, but I'd survive. I was excited to tell Jess when she got home. After dinner, I shared my plan, expecting her to be thrilled. She wasn't. She paused longer than I expected and said, "Thomas, you should consult with me first. Charles has a mandatory faculty meeting next Saturday to discuss new curriculum ideas." Her face showed annoyance, not disappointment. "Jess, I did check with you. Our shared calendar didn't show this. How long ago was this scheduled?" The fact that Dr. Welborn was now Charles didn't escape me. "About a week ago, I guess," Jess answered, less confidently. "I thought I put it on the list, but maybe I forgot." This was a first since the shared calendar was her idea. I was furious. "Damn it, Jess. You work long enough as it is, and now Welborn thinks he controls your weekends too." "That's not fair, Thomas. Charles wants the best for our students and the math department. It's just one Saturday. We can find another weekend." "That's not the point, Jess," I replied, frustrated. "We've been using this calendar for months because it was your idea. Remember when I forgot to put a dinner with clients on the calendar? You demanded we reschedule. What's fair for me is fair for you." "Damn it, Thomas, you're making a big deal out of nothing. We can just reschedule." "I'm sorry, Jess. You're right," I said sarcastically. "Forgive me for treating you the way you treat me. Forgive me for wanting to plan a nice weekend with my wife. Forgive me for encroaching on Charlie's important schedule." She started to reply angrily, but I walked out. I jumped on Greta and rode around for an hour to cool off, which turned into 3 after stopping by the local pub for a few beers. When I got home, it was icy cold between us. We only saw each other in passing and didn't speak. I worked in my home office for a couple of hours and then crashed on the couch. I'm an early riser, a habit from my logging days when work started before dawn. I left the house at 5:30 and Jess usually got up around 6:15, so we didn't cross paths. I canceled the cabin reservation, losing a $100 deposit. It wasn't much, but it made me sad. Later, I saw her faculty meeting on the calendar, along with a math conference in January and 2 girls' nights out. I sent Jess a snarky text. "Going to the rink after work, game at 7 and beers afterward. I'll be home around 11. Check the shared calendar if unclear. It's been there for 2 months. No response. The next week we barely spoke, each waiting for the other to apologize. I was upset she didn't update the calendar and seemed indifferent. She probably expected me to come crawling back. We were both disappointed. The following Saturday, Jess surprised me with a kiss at breakfast. "Thomas, I hope we can talk and make up today. I understand your disappointment, but I'm sure we can work things out," she said, winking and leaving without an apology or acknowledgement of her mistake. Seeger's lyrics echoed in my head, a face that lets her get her way. I grumbled for half an hour, then decided not to waste the day. The porch door had been creaking for weeks, so I took it off the hinges to oil it but realized we were out of oil. I jumped in my Jeep and headed to the hardware store. Mick's store has been around since just after WWO, staying in the family for 90 years. Mick the Fourth now runs it with his sons, Mick V and Eddie. I played hockey with Eddie, and Mick V only worked weekends because he taught math at Jess's school. Imagine my surprise when I walked in and saw Mick V helping a customer with a snowblower. He waved as I walked in. My surprised look must have caught his attention because he found me in Section 9 a few minutes later. "Hey, Jaxie, heard you had a goal and 2 assists on Thursday. Eddie said you played well for an old man." "Hey, V, yeah, it was a good night. Sorry for the weird look, but I thought Wellborn had a middle school math meeting today. Did you quit your job?" Now he looked embarrassed. "I'm still teaching, but Wellborn didn't schedule a meeting for today. He's arrogant, but not that stupid. Did Jess tell you we had a meeting?" I kept my composure. I must have misunderstood Jess as she left. Then I had another thought. "Hey, V, does the math department attend conferences?" "Yes, the next seminar is in Estes Park at the end of March. I'll be there, then hit the slopes." Trying to stay calm, I replied, "Sounds like you, V. Surprised you plan to attend half the meetings." "Yeah, I must be getting old. See you later, Jaxie." And he walked away. Distrust filled me as I paid for the oil and jumped into the Jeep. Why was Jess lying? I drove past the school twice, checking all 4 parking lots. No cars, no lights. My mind raced. I needed facts about where she was and what she was doing. I couldn't just wait at home. I went to a coffee shop, grabbed a cup, and sat in the back with a notepad. An hour later, I had a plan. My insurance agent, Pat Cook, known as Cookie on the hockey team, was surprised to get a call from me on a Saturday morning. "Jaxie, did you break your leg trying to improve your skating skills?" "Not yet. Cookie, I need a few minutes. Can I meet you at your office?" He knew from my tone this was serious. 15 minutes later, we were in his conference room. "When you suspect insurance fraud, do you hire a private investigator?" "Sure, but why do you need one?" "Cookie, this is confidential, right?" He looked offended. "Sorry, my head's spinning. I think Jess might be having an affair, and I need to find out. Can you help?" "I hope you're wrong. I don't have a boyfriend, but I know a top-notch investigator. She's almost invisible, tough as nails, and always gets results. I can set you up with her. She's not cheap, but she's the best." "Thank you, Cookie." Her name was Ella Compton. Since PIs work odd hours, she agreed to meet later that afternoon. I went home, finished the porch door, showered, ate, and met her at 1 o'clock. I sent Jess a note saying I had errands and would be home by 3. Ella was short, about 5 feet tall, but clearly tough. She smiled politely but spoke with a no-nonsense tone. I explained my situation. If you want a detailed report, it will take several weeks, possibly into the new year. Since you think she's lying about the conference, it will cost you. I need $1,500 up front and will invoice the rest later. I sent the deposit while she asked a few more questions. We shook hands and left. I felt low, but knew I needed to keep up appearances. Secrecy was my only path to the truth. Jess was home, humming in the kitchen when I walked in. I kissed her on the cheek, telling her I needed a shower. I had tickets to the Avs-Preds game that night, and Jess rarely went with me. I was taking Mikey, and she was pleased. Before I left, I lied for the first time. Jess, I'm sorry I overreacted this weekend. I wanted us to go away, but I shouldn't have talked to you like that. Please forgive me. Of course, Thomas. I understand your frustration. We'll go soon, just the two of us. Cow to the end, I thought. The next 6 weeks were hell. I put on a happy face at work, at home, and with family. Christmas was brutal. Jess and I exchanged gifts, visited my in-laws for lunch, and her family for dinner. New Year's Eve was even worse. We went out for dinner and dancing, then spent the night in our hotel room. The physical part felt empty. On Sunday, we had dinner at Mom and Dad's with Grandma and Grandpa Rexford. As we hugged and kissed goodbye, Grandpa quietly pulled me aside. I'm sorry, Thomas. I really am, he whispered. Sorry for what, Grandpa? I asked, confused. I'm sorry I was right. How's that? He smiled sadly. I was right about the ugliness. Just know we're all with you, no matter what happens. I wanted to cry, but he saw my tears. You'll get through this, Thomas. There will be time for tears later. For now, do what you have to do. We Rexfords stick together and take care of each other. His strength reassured me I could handle it. 3 weeks later, I sat in Ella's office. She had called the day before to say the report was ready. I asked to meet at her work instead of mine. She began, I'm sorry to tell you, Thomas, but your wife is a lying cheat. If you need a moment, take it. No, go on, please. Chuck entertains your wife, usually at the Hampton Inn in Englewood. They choose that location because you don't have offices nearby. They act professional at work and are very discreet. They drive separately to a rest stop or truck stop, far enough away but close enough to get home quickly if needed. There was no conference in Colorado Springs. They spent that weekend in Gunnison in a remote cabin. They meet about every 8 or 9 days and have met at least 6 times since you hired me. I have audio and video from their last 2 meetings at the Hampton, along with pictures and conversations from their phones. The evidence is irrefutable. She handed me a thick folder. It's all here, but I advise against looking at the pictures or listening to the recordings right away. For some reason, I stayed calm throughout our conversation. I asked a few clarifying questions, which she answered thoroughly. When we were done, I asked her to email the final invoice to my personal work address. I gathered my folder and stood up to leave. Mr. Rexford, if I may, this is the best and worst part of my job. I'm picky about my clients and avoid liars and scammers. I never help anyone cheat. I know you're a good guy who doesn't deserve this. It's tough to give you this news, but now you know the truth. You're no longer in the dark and can take back control of your life. Thank you, I mumbled. One last thing, she said. I dug more into Chuck. This isn't his first affair. If you need help bringing him down, I'll help at no extra charge. Too bad it's not the 1880s. We could have strung him up before sunset. As I left, I noticed it had started to snow, a gray gloom enveloping my world. I sat in my Jeep, deciding what to do next. 5 minutes later, I called Jess. She answered on the 3rd ring. Hey, babe. I had to go to Boulder this afternoon for a client. It's snowing like crazy, and I still have work to finish, so I won't be home until tomorrow. Oh, I'm sorry, babe. I was going to surprise you and go to your hockey game tonight. Be careful driving home tomorrow. I love you. Thanks. Bye, was all I could say. I considered going to my parents' house, but drove to the Hampton Inn in Englewood instead. I parked where I could watch the entrance, hidden by some bushes. I decided to wait for an hour. While I waited, I called Cookie and told him the bad news. Jaxie, I'm sorry as hell. Thanks, Cookie. Cover for me tonight with the guys. Make sure they know the next keg is on me. I'll call you tomorrow. Score a couple of goals for me. You got it, brother. I didn't have to worry about whether my ex-wife would show up with her lover. About 35 minutes later, Chuck arrived and went inside. 5 minutes after that, Jess parked at the far end and met him at the side door, where he gave her a quick kiss. I threw up all over the bushes. After that, I drove to my parents' house. On the way, I called my dad and told him everything. He was silent, which meant he was furious. I asked him to tell my mom because I didn't have the energy to repeat the story. I said I'd be there in about 20 minutes and hung up, crying the whole way. When I pulled up, I saw Mikey, Uncle Mike, and Grandpa's cars. My mom opened the door before I reached the steps. I collapsed into her arms, sobbing. When I came to, the 6 of us were in the living room. Mom wanted to feed me, and Dad poured me a stiff drink, but I refused both, not trusting my stomach. I spent the next 30 minutes telling them the story. I hadn't read the dossier yet, but I knew enough from my conversation with Ella. Everyone sat in silence, letting me vent. I cried the whole time, and my mom stroked my back like when I was a kid. By the end, everyone had tears in their eyes. Grandfather spoke first. "We are all deeply saddened by your pain. We would all like a few minutes alone with Jess and her boss, but we must be wise. Speaking out now would be the wrong approach. Let's chat some more, then adjourn for the evening. Take a strong sleeping pill and we'll pick this up in the morning. Tonight's discussion won't help. As I told you before, we are all with you no matter what." Everyone looked at Grandpa with wide eyes, realizing he knew what was going on even if they hadn't. No one was upset he hadn't told them sooner. They trusted him as the cornerstone of our family. "You're right, Dad," my dad finally said. Then he asked, "What should we do about Thomas's absence tomorrow? Will Jess expect him to call or be home by early afternoon?" Uncle Mike jumped up. "I can handle it. Thomas told Jess he's busy in Boulder. This storm gives him a perfect excuse. I'll call Jess in the morning and explain that the situation is serious and only Thomas can handle it. He'll have to talk to her tomorrow, but I can assure her it will take another day or two. Since she's in school, she won't be tempted to go to Boulder." We agreed to the plan with some additions from Mom and Dad. My brother hugged me tightly, tears flowing. Uncle Mike hugged me too, and Grandpa took my face in his hands. "You'll get through this, Thomas. You have my word." After everyone left, I went to the guest room, took a couple of sleeping pills, and was out like a light. The next morning, I was surprisingly calm and determined, though still sad. Jess had made her choices, breaking her vows and neglecting me. It was time for me to make mine. My family's love would help me endure, and my long-term plan was forming. By 8:30 a.m., we reconvened around the kitchen table. By noon, we had the basics of the plan ready. My next stop was a lawyer Uncle Mike recommended, someone experienced with cases like mine. At 1:30 sharp, I walked into the law office of Beach, and Beach. I was seated with Meredith Beach Cochran, a pleasant-looking woman in her late 40s with steely blue eyes and a firm handshake. She practiced family law exclusively and never represented a cheating spouse. She was well-versed in Colorado divorce law. "What do you want when the dust settles, Mr. Rexford?" "I'm not sure yet. I don't want her to get more than she brought into the marriage, but I know that's unrealistic. Our prenup protects my family business in case of infidelity. I want my name clear, and I want everyone to know her infidelity is why I'm suing. I want his name public and hope he gets fired. Mostly, I want to move on with my life." "Most of what you say makes sense. I'm glad you have realistic expectations. As your lawyer, I have to ask, are you planning to damage them?" "No, ma'am, but I can't guarantee what some of my hockey buddies might do." "Good," she replied with an evil smirk. I stared at her surprised. "Two brothers played at the University of Denver in the early 2000s, Jaxie. I know the lingo," she winked. "Well, Mrs. Beach Cochran, it looks like I found the right lawyer." "Yes, Mr. Rexford. Call me Beecher if you like." "Great, I'm Jaxie." Before I left, we agreed on 3 things. I would leave the PI file with her for review. She would file for divorce within 24 hours, and Jess would be served after school on Friday in the parking lot. This shock might make Jess react in a way that would benefit us. I would meet Jess at home Friday night to confront her and demand she leave since the house was in my name. We would keep the PI on Jess to monitor her behavior before and after being served. The bill was already around $5,000, which was frustrating. She emphasized staying calm, letting my family support me, and continuing to live my life as usual. We exchanged cell phone numbers for any questions. Before leaving, I asked, "Why isn't the practice called Beach, Cochran, and Beach?" She smiled. "I'm patient, Jaxie. Daddy will retire in 3 years, and then I'll be senior partner. It will be Beach, Cochran, and Beach." I texted Jess as I left her office. "Finished with this mess. On my way. I'll be home around 6. She replied, "Can't wait to see you," adding a heart emoji. I deleted the message. I went to my parents' house to update them. Mikey was there with Mom and Dad. I called Grandpa to bring him up to speed. "You're already talking better, Thomas. I'm proud of how you're holding up." At 5:30, I headed home. Jess was upstairs, but came down when she heard the door. We exchanged kisses and hugs. I showered, changed, and we made a simple dinner of burgers and salad. I realized I hadn't eaten in over 24 hours and was suddenly hungry. As dinner ended, Jess began to flirt. She wore a baggy shirt, no bra, and leggings. She placed her leg in my lap. Though I got hard instantly, the thought of lovemaking with Jess disgusted me, but she was still my wife. You may have been Jaxie last night, but I hope Jaxie takes his wife upstairs tonight. Sorry, babe, my head is still splitting from the last 2 days and driving in the snow. She looked surprised. I could count on one hand the times I'd turned her down for lovemaking and still have fingers left. I understand. I'm sorry, she replied, clearly disappointed. I wanted to tell her to have fun with Chuck at the Hampton Inn, but I didn't. Instead, I said, "How about we take a bath, and I give you a back rub?" Still smiling, I gently removed her foot from my lap. She took a long bath, and I gave her a back massage, fighting the urge to strangle her. After about 20 minutes, she fell asleep. I covered her and moved as far away from the bed as possible. The next night, I had a hockey game. She didn't suggest I skip it since I missed Monday's game. Thursday night was harder, but dinner with her parents made it easier. On the way home, she clearly wanted something, so I discreetly texted Uncle Mike before we left. 2 minutes after we arrived home, Uncle Mike called. "Thomas, sorry to bother you. Are you with Jess?" "Yes, Uncle Mike. We just had dinner at the Remingtons." "Hi, Jess." "Hi, Uncle Mike. We're a little busy. Can Thomas call you back in the morning?" She winked at me. "I'm sorry, but this can't wait. Thomas, Jackson's investment file wasn't finished. Tina went home sick, and we need it for tomorrow's 7:30 a.m. meeting." "Damn, Uncle Mike." I pretended to be frustrated. "Okay, I'll drop Jess off and meet you at the office in 30 minutes. "Thanks, Thomas. Sorry, Jess." "Uncle Mike, you owe us a steak dinner at Capitol Grill." "Deal." "Damn it, Thomas, this is getting very unpleasant," Jess complained. "What does a girl have to do to get her husband in bed?" I refrained from saying what came to mind. "I know, babe, but I'm sure you'll get a break one of these days." She didn't notice I said you instead of we. She hummed and sulked for the last 10 minutes. When she got out of the car, I rolled down the window and shouted, "I won't be in for another 3 hours. Why don't you wait for me?" She didn't look back, just waved and walked into the house. Yeah, that's right. Screw you. Friday was the most unproductive day of my career. I arrived early, leaving Jess a note that I would be there before dawn to ensure we had an uninterrupted evening. After catching up on some paperwork and making a few client calls, I checked the time, expecting it to be noon. It was only 9:30 a.m. I told my assistant Donna that I was heading to the gym, where I worked out furiously. After meeting Dad and Uncle Mike for lunch, I returned to the office for another 2 unproductive hours before heading home, arriving an hour before Jess. Just as I was approaching the front door, Jess was finishing her last class of the day. Chuck slipped into her classroom with a lecherous grin. "Sweetie, how about a detour on the way home this afternoon?" Chuck was charming and good-looking, but Jess, who could get her way with her looks, was getting bored with him. He was good in bed but had a job with limited prospects. He wasn't going to be rich, and he was 15 years older with a wife and 3 kids. Chuck was a dead end, and she needed to end it politely since he was still her boss. "I'm sorry, Charles, but Thomas and I haven't spent much time together this week. How about we meet late Sunday night? Thomas has a hockey game at 5, so I could meet you between 4 and 6. I'll let you know at the end that we had fun, but we're done," she thought to herself. Chuck wasn't happy, but understood. Maybe he could still arrange for his mother-in-law to take the kids out for the evening. His wife wasn't as beautiful as Jess, but she looked fine. "Okay, I'll pick you up at the bus stop at 4 sharp. She heard him whistle as he left the classroom. Jess was relieved she was going to break up with Chuck Wellborn. He had been treating her like a princess, but was starting to feel entitled to her. She always had the upper hand with men, including Thomas. She wasn't going to let Charles or any other man control her. After another 30 minutes of grading math tests, Jess realized she adored her husband. He was strong when needed, but also pampered her as she deserved. He was a great provider and would make a wonderful father, following his father and grandfather. Deep down, she knew she couldn't promise never to cheat again, but she vowed to rededicate herself to loving him. The connections between love, loyalty, commitment, and honesty in her brain weren't working. She didn't feel the guilt or shame she should have. Jess should have realized how selfish and narcissistic she was deep down, but she didn't. She didn't recognize her true ugliness. But that was about to change. "Excuse me, are you Mrs. Jessica Rexford?" a woman asked, approaching Jess in the parking lot with a manila envelope. Beecher always used women for serving papers to wives as they were less conspicuous. Yes, that's me. Sorry, I don't recognize you. Who are you? I have an important document for you. May I see some ID? Sure, Jess replied, feeling embarrassed and curious. She showed her faculty lanyard. Thank you, Mrs. Jessica Rexford. You've been served. The woman handed Jess the folder, then walked away. Jess was left stunned, holding the papers. Wait. What? I don't understand. What is this? Jessica received no response. Slowly, reality began to sink in. No, this can't be happening, she hissed, tearing open the envelope. The top of the page read, Statement of Dissolution of Marriage. No, it can't be, she thought. Thomas would never do this. He adores me. He loves me. He can't know about Charles. We've been secretive. There's no way he could know. If he did, he would have confronted me. Oh God, I have to go home and make things right. She fumbled with her keys, dropped the papers, and cried. After gathering everything, she opened the car door and started the engine, sobbing and shaking with fear. She tried to calm herself but was confused, having lived a life without real shocks or stress. It took a few minutes to collect herself and start driving home. On the way, she swung between hysterics, rage, tears, and back to rage. When she got home, she would tell Thomas what she thought. No one, especially Thomas Rexford, had ever treated her so shamefully. How dare he pull such a stunt at her workplace? Thankfully, most people had left, but a few teachers were still on campus, and some had likely seen the confrontation. By Monday, gossip would be rampant. She never considered that she caused her own pain. Her infidelity was the root of this disaster. By the time she pulled into the driveway, she had calmed down and decided to stay composed. She was confident she could explain her affair with Charles if Thomas found out. She planned to claim that Charles forced her to sleep with him for career advancement. She vowed never to cheat again, but she was too afraid to confess to Thomas, fearing his temper and potential retaliation against Charles. As she walked through the front door, she was confident in her strategy. When she entered, I was already sitting at the kitchen table with another folder on it. But Jess ignored it, moving forward with her plan. Thomas, my love, this must be a terrible mistake. Why would you divorce me? We love each other. You are my soulmate. What made you do this? I remained calm. Jess, please sit down. She did. Jess, I've learned some disturbing things about your behavior. I'm giving you the chance to come clean and tell me the truth. I promise to listen without interrupting. If you explain honestly, I'll reconsider. Jess started to interrupt, but I raised my hand. But Jess, before you start, let me make this clear. I'm going to record our conversation on my phone to avoid any misunderstandings later. You have one chance to be completely truthful. If you lie or misrepresent your actions, it's over, and I'll proceed with the divorce immediately. It's up to you to share your thoughts. Ignoring the folder on the desk, Jess began, I don't mind writing this down, Thomas, but I'll tell you the truth. Charles Wellborn forced himself on me. He used his position of power to impose himself on me. I fought off his advances time and time again, but he made it clear to me that my best way forward was into his bed. I hated every second of it, but I endured because I was overwhelmed and didn't know what to do. Jess started to cry as she continued. I didn't want to tell you because I thought I could handle him, and I was afraid you would jump him and end up arrested or worse, in jail. When it became clear that there was only one single way to satisfy him, I did sleep with him, but it was only once, and I hated every second of it. Today, after school, he was in my class and tried to get me to sleep with him before I went back to your house. But I turned him down. Oh, Thomas, I'm so glad you know. Now you can help me put an end to his bullying. I can't prove it, but I've heard the gossip, and I think he's done it to other teachers before me. At this point, Jess put her head on the table and began to sob. Clap, clap, clap! I gave her a sarcastic applause. I was heartbroken over her obvious lies, but part of me had to give her credit. Maybe after the divorce, she could pursue an acting career. Jess, I'm really sad, but that was an amazing performance. Thomas, what are you talking about? How can you say such horrible things after I gave you my soul? Jess, you've always had a knack for getting your way with men, including me. You are beautiful on the outside, and sometimes we gullibly believe there's inner beauty too. Let me tell you what I know. I opened the file and began to lay out the case. You've been sleeping with Chuck for at least 2 months. You meet at the Hampton Inn in Englewood. I started to slide the photos across the table. Jess began to pale. At least 6 rendezvous in the last 2 months. There was no Saturday morning math meeting in early December and no teachers' conference in Colorado Springs. I have recordings of your conversations, including one where you talk about how much you love Charles and enjoy your time together. So, my dear loving wife, you certainly don't look like a woman who was coerced. Your voice in these recordings speaks the truth. You had fun with Chuck at least 8 times, including a weekend in Gunnison. This only shows you are a deceitful wife who thought she could get away with it. Jess sat speechless for the first time in her life. Realizing she couldn't flirt her way out, she broke down. You broke my heart, Jess. I have no idea how many tears I've shed over the past couple of months coming to grips with your betrayal. My relationships at work and with my family have suffered. My self-esteem has hit rock bottom. And I've asked myself more than once, why? Why did you destroy my love and our marriage for some fun on the side with a school teacher? I've seen pictures of Chuck up close. He's no bigger than I am. And even though it made me sick listening to the two of you, I know he's no better in bed than I am because he never brought love to it. My anger started to rise. You know what, Jess? I've realized you're not worth my tears anymore. My feelings are deeply hurt, and I don't know if I'll ever trust another woman. But I'm not going to hide away. You're an ugly, selfish person inside. I'll move on, knowing I gave you my best. It's not my fault. I'm not perfect, but I never deserved your contempt and disrespect. I don't care about you anymore. Some say the opposite of love is hate, but I think it's indifference. That's how I'll treat you. You won't matter to me anymore. It'll take time to heal, but from now on, you're nothing to me. Thomas, No, Jess, no more. I've packed a bag for you. You can grab other things from upstairs, but you're leaving today. My lawyer's contact info is in your packet. When you want to get more of your stuff, let her know, and I'll make sure I'm not here. Take everything you brought into our marriage. What you leave, I'll throw away or burn. But, Thomas, please forgive me. I was scared to tell you the truth. I messed up, but we can move past this. I want to be with you and only you. Scared, Jess? Really? When have I ever made you afraid? I've never raised a hand or my voice at you. If you were scared, it was only because you knew you couldn't have it all. Thomas, I won't leave like a defeated woman. You can't kick me out. This is my home too. Her Irish stubbornness kicked in, and she wasn't going down without a fight. Jess, I replied calmly, I bought this house with my money before we married. It's in my name. We have no children, so you can't claim the house for childcare. Our prenup clearly states I keep my assets if we divorce due to your infidelity. Your looks might usually get you your way, but you should have read that document more carefully. You can't cheat and take my home. Thomas, I don't want to take anything from you. I want us to be together. Charles means nothing to me. I was planning to break up with him on Sunday afternoon. She knew she messed up as soon as she said it. Sunday afternoon? While I was at my hockey game. Even if I believed you, and I don't, it's too late. I swear, Thomas, I don't care about him. It was a stupid affair. I have no excuses, but you can't end our marriage over this. We're meant to be together. Yes, Jess, it was stupid, also selfish and cruel. But let's be clear. I'm not giving up on our marriage. You destroyed it with your affair. You burned our love when you lied about a work meeting. If you can't see that, I feel sorry for you. I'm just ending our sham marriage. She started sobbing, realizing the full impact of her actions. I waited for her to compose herself. Where will I go? What will I do, Thomas? That's up to you, Jess. My family knows what happened and has supported me these past months. I haven't told your family, but I will if you lie to them. I won't attack Chuck Renoff, but by Monday, your principal will know. I won't sue the school, but I won't hide your affair either. Chuck's wife will hear the truth if she asks. He has 3 kids. Their lives will be affected, and that's on you. I'm done taking care of you. The locks are changed. I haven't touched your money. The divorce settlement is fair. Contact your lawyer and sign the papers. Now, please gather your things and leave my house. Jess finally gave up. She wiped her eyes, went upstairs to gather a few things, and then left through the kitchen. I sat in silence, exhausted but relieved it was over. I'm sorry, Thomas. Yes, Jess, you are. 8 months later, I'm divorced and heading to Santa Fe. Why leave town? I need some time away. I love my family, and they love me. But I need space, like when I went to Oregon 15 years ago. I'll spend a year or 2 starting the business, then hire someone to run the New Mexico office and move back to Denver. My hockey team will miss me, but I need a new adventure. The only woman I plan on spending time with is Greta. As for Jess, I heard some hockey wives took her on a fun girls' weekend when they found out. She didn't have the best time, thanks to her ex-friend Trisha. Chuck, Dr. Fielding, the principal, made his life miserable, and his contract wasn't renewed. He left the state, his wife divorced him, and his kids won't talk to him. Before leaving, he fell down the stairs at his apartment, breaking 3 ribs, his teeth, and his arm. My hockey buddies were at O'Connell's when it happened, according to about 20 witnesses. Well, maybe Bob Seeger was wrong.